Welcome to an unforgettable story that starts with what looks like a regular traffic stop, but quickly turns into a dramatic situation with major consequences. Officer Jenny Thompson and her partner, Tom Stevens, are patrolling the city streets when Tom's clear racism leads them to pull over a well-dressed black woman. As Tom's prejudice becomes more obvious, the tension rises, and Jenny is stuck between following her duty and listening to her conscience. What begins as a normal check unexpectedly transforms into a shocking encounter with an unpredictable twist that no one could have seen coming. Watch as Jenny takes a brave stand, uncovering corruption and sparking a crucial moment of change. From a tense start to a dramatic finish, this story will keep you on the edge of your seat. If you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend hitting that subscribe button and turning on notifications so you don't miss any videos. Officer Jenny Thompson and her partner, Tom Stevens, were driving through the city in their police cruiser. The atmosphere in the car was thick with tension as Tom complained about the recent changes in the police department. "Can you believe they made one of them a captain?" Tom's voice was filled with disgust, and his grip on the steering wheel was so tight that his knuckles turned pale. "This department is going downhill." Jenny shifted uncomfortably in her seat. She hadn't been on the force for long, but Tom's open racism and harsh criticism made her uneasy. "Maybe we should give the new captain a fair shot," she suggested, trying to bring some reason into the conversation. Tom's response was quick and dismissive. "You're just being naive," he scoffed. "They're all the same. You can't trust any of them." As they turned onto Main Street, Tom's attention suddenly shifted to a sleek black sedan that was smoothly moving through traffic. The driver, a composed and well-dressed black woman, was following every rule of the road. But for some reason, her presence made Tom suspicious. "Look at that car," Tom muttered, his voice filled with distrust. "I bet she stole it." Jenny frowned, her gut telling her that the woman's only offense was the car she drove and the way she looked. "Sir, we don't have any reason to think she's done anything wrong," Jenny said firmly, though she was feeling uneasy. "She's following the rules." Tom responded with a grunt, clearly ignoring her words. Without saying anything else, he turned on the cruiser's lights and pulled the sedan over. The situation was about to take a turn that neither officer could have predicted. "That's what you think," Tom replied with a hint of nastiness as he switched on the flashing lights. The black sedan smoothly pulled over to the side of the road. Jenny watched as the driver's shoulders seemed to tense up. Her own unease grew with each passing second. Tom, completely ignoring Jenny's worries, stepped out of a patrol car with a grin that made it clear he was enjoying himself. Jenny reluctantly followed, her stomach in knots. As they approached the car, the driver rolled down her window, revealing a calm but cautious woman. Her eyes moved between Tom and Jenny, showing a mix of concern and confidence. "Is there a problem, officers?" she asked, her voice calm, though the situation didn't seem to match her tone. "License and registration," Tom said sternly, without any explanation. Tom barked the order, his voice sharp and filled with barely hidden contempt. The woman, hands trembling just a bit, handed over her documents with a quiet sense of surrender. Jenny noticed a slight shake in her hands, a clear sign of the pressure she was feeling. "Elaine Davis," Tom read out loud, his tone dripping with disdain. He shot a hard look at her. "What brings you to this side of town, Miss Davis?" he asked with an almost accusatory tone. "I'm heading to a meeting," Elaine replied in a calm, measured voice. "Can you tell me why I was pulled over?" Jenny's heart sank as she noticed a shift in Tom's attitude, from professional to outright hostile. The situation was quickly spiraling out of control, and she had a sinking feeling that things were about to get much worse. Tom's eyes narrowed as he glared at Elaine. "We're the ones asking the questions here." "Step out of the car," he ordered, his voice hard and cold. Elaine hesitated, glancing nervously at Jenny, whose face was filled with guilt and shame. Jenny could barely meet her eyes. After a moment of hesitation, Elaine slowly opened the car door and stepped out, moving with deliberate caution, as if she could feel the growing tension in the air. Jenny's heart was pounding now, her worry growing with each passing second. She knew something wasn't right, but she felt trapped, unsure what to do or how to stop what was happening. Tom, now acting with a sense of authority that bordered on intimidation, began his questioning. His tone was sharp, giving Elaine no room for cooperation. He walked around her car like a predator circling its prey, his eyes scanning every inch of the vehicle as if he was searching for an excuse to escalate the situation further. "Nice car you've got here, Miss Davis," Tom sneered, his voice dripping with condescension. "Care to explain how someone like you can afford something like this?" Elaine took a deep breath, staying calm despite the hostility directed at her. "I work hard for my money, officer," she said firmly, keeping her voice steady even as the tension grew. "I'm on my way to an important meeting. Could you please tell me why you stopped me?" But Tom wasn't interested in answering her question. Instead, his hand rested on his holster, as if to silently threaten her. "Mind if we take a look inside?" he asked, though his tone made it clear that it wasn't really a request. Elaine stood her ground. "I do mind, actually," she said, her voice strong and unwavering. "I haven't done anything wrong, and I do not consent to a search." Tom's face twisted with frustration, clearly not used to being challenged. His anger was obvious, and it seemed like he was about to push the situation even further. "Oh, I see. You've got something to hide, don't you?" he snarled. Without any warning, he yanked the car door open, the screech of the door echoing in the tense silence, and started rummaging through the inside of the car. Elaine took a step forward, ready to protest the unjust search. But before she could say anything, Jenny quickly stepped in front of her, alarm clear on her face. "Sir, please, you need to step back," Jenny urged, her voice shaking with fear and urgency. Tom ignored her completely, continuing his search with a sense of power. As he moved, Jenny noticed something out of the corner of her eye. Her heart began to race as she realized what was happening. She saw Tom quietly pull a small bag of white powder from his pocket and slip it under the driver's seat. Her pulse quickened as she processed the gravity of the situation. This wasn't just about racial profiling anymore. This was a setup, a deliberate, orchestrated attempt to frame Elaine for something she didn't do. If you're still watching this video and find these stories interesting, please comment the number 1 below to let me know you're still here with me. Thank you for your valuable time. Tom, with a triumphant look, turned back to Jenny. Tom stepped out of the car, holding up the small bag of powder like a prize. "Well, well, well," he said, his voice oozing with satisfaction. "Look what we have here." Elaine's eyes went wide, her face pale with shock and disbelief. "That's not mine. You just planted that," she cried out, her voice a mix of anger and desperation. Tom's smirk deepened. "Looks like we've got ourselves a drug dealer," he said with a tone that sounded like a final verdict. "You're under arrest." As he reached for his handcuffs, Elaine's calm demeanor finally broke. "This is outrageous. I'm telling you that's not mine," she protested fiercely. Jenny's stomach twisted in disgust. She was watching a clear abuse of power, a deliberate act of corruption. Her father's words echoed in her mind. A true officer the law protects and serves everyone equally, not just those who fit a certain profile. The tension in the air was thick, almost unbearable, as if something terrible was about to happen. Elaine, her face full of fear and desperation, turned to Jenny. Her eyes were pleading. "Officer, you saw what happened. You have to tell him. This isn't right," she begged, her voice trembling with a mix of hope and dread. Tom's expression darkened. He spun around, glaring at Jenny with irritation and menace. "Don't you dare listen to her, rookie," he snapped, his voice filled with authority. "This is how we clean up the streets, by any means necessary." His words hung in the air, heavy and grim, a harsh declaration of his mindset. Jenny stood frozen, trapped in a storm of conflicting emotions. Her mind raced as she wrestled with the weight of the moment, torn between the duty to support her partner and the moral responsibility to uphold justice. The decision felt like a crushing weight on her shoulders, forcing her to choose between conformity and her conscience. a choice that could change the course of her career and possibly her entire life. As Tom moved closer, ready to handcuff Elaine, the situation grew more volatile, teetering on the edge of chaos. Each second felt drawn out, every heartbeat amplifying the stakes. Jenny's heart raced as she watched Tom's hand inch closer to the cuffs. It felt like time had slowed to a crawl. Memories flashed through her mind. The proud smile on her father's face when she graduated from the police academy, the countless stories of honor and integrity she had grown up with, and the solemn oath she had taken to serve and protect with unwavering honesty. In that crucial moment, the future hung in the balance. Jenny's choice would not only determine the fate of an innocent woman, but it would also test her commitment to the values she had sworn to uphold. "Stop!" Jenny's voice sliced through the thick tension, sharper than she had intended. The word startled even her. Tom froze mid-motion, his hand hovering just inches from Elaine's wrist. His face twisted in surprise and rising anger. "What did you just say, rookie?" His voice was laced with disbelief, barely hiding his fury. "I said stop, officer. This isn't right, and deep down you know it," Jenny insisted, her voice steady as she stood her ground. Tom's face contorted into a grimace of rage, his eyes narrowing dangerously. "You listen to me, you little punk," Tom growled, his voice low and dripping with authority. "I've been on this force longer than you've been alive. You don't get to tell me what's right or wrong." "Maybe that's true," Jenny replied, refusing to back down. "But I know what I saw. You planted that evidence. This woman is innocent." Elaine, who had been silent and tense through the whole ordeal, now had a flicker of hope in her eyes. Her gaze stayed fixed on Jenny, watching the confrontation unfold. Tom's voice dropped to a menacing whisper, his whole demeanor darkening. "You're making a huge mistake, kid," he warned, his threat heavy in the air. "I can end your career right here, right now. Is that what you really want?" For a moment, doubt crept into Jenny's mind. Ever since she was a child, she had dreamed of becoming a police officer, imagining herself as a force for good, making a real difference in the world. She had worked tirelessly through her training, facing every challenge head-on, all to be here, in this moment. Now, faced with a decision that could destroy everything she had built, she wondered if she was ready to risk it all, for one person. Her mind swirled with uncertainty as she glanced at Elaine. The woman's eyes were wide with fear, full of desperation. She was vulnerable, completely at the mercy of what would happen next. And in that moment, Jenny's doubts vanished, replaced by a deep sense of responsibility. She couldn't abandon Elaine, not when it mattered most. "If standing up for what's right cost me my job, then so be it," Jenny said firmly, her voice steady and unyielding. "I won't be a part of this. I won't let this injustice happen." Tom's face flushed with anger, his skin turning a deep shade of red. Barely able to control his temper, he jabbed his finger into Jenny's chest. "You're finished. You hear me? Finished. I'll make sure you never wear a badge again. You can count on that." Jenny stood firm, her expression calm and unwavering. "Go ahead, Tom. Do what you need to do, but I'm not moving, and you're not arresting this woman on false charges." The air between the two officers crackled with tension. Tom's rage was almost tangible, the hostility between them thick enough to cut. Elaine, recognizing the danger in the situation, took a deep breath and spoke up. "Officers, please," Elaine said, her voice trembling but determined. "There's no need for this to get out of control. We can resolve this peacefully, with respect for everyone involved." Tom turned on Elaine, his irritation exploding. "Shut your mouth. You have no say in this," he snapped, his words laced with venom. Jenny, feeling a surge of courage, stepped closer to Tom and placed a firm hand on his shoulder, both physically and metaphorically trying to pull him back from the edge. "That's enough," she said, her voice strong. "She has rights and you're violating them." Tom reacted with hostility, roughly shoving Jenny's hand away. "You're making the biggest mistake of your life, kid. Don't think for a second I won't report this blatant act of insubordination," he growled, his voice full of menace, a clear threat hanging in the air. Jenny didn't back down. Her father's words echoed in her mind with undeniable clarity. I'd rather lose my job than lose my integrity. I'd rather lose my job than be part of this, she declared. Her voice calm despite the storm brewing around them. The tension was almost unbearable as the standoff escalated. What started as a heated argument was now a turning point, a moment that would ripple far beyond this roadside incident. Jenny's stand against injustice was about to set off a chain of events that would shake the very foundation of their precinct and the community. Cars slowed as they passed. Drivers' curiosity piqued by the scene unfolding in front of them. Elaine, recognizing the critical point they had reached, knew she had to act boldly. With calm authority, she spoke. Officer, Elaine said, her voice steady, I think there's something important you both need to know. Tom sneered, his arrogance barely concealed. Save it for the judge. But Elaine wasn't deterred. I am Captain Elaine Davis, the new head of your precinct. Her words landed like a bomb, hanging in the air as the gravity of the situation hit both officers. Tom's confident smirk faded as his face drained of color, while Jenny's eyes widened in shock. That's impossible, Tom stammered, his once unshakable demeanor crumbling in the face of this unexpected revelation. Elaine moved slowly, deliberately. She reached into her jacket pocket, and the air became thick with anticipation. Both officers watched her movements, unsure of what was coming next. For a brief, tense moment, it seemed like she might pull out something far more alarming. The silence was almost unbearable as the tension reached its peak. But when Elaine's hand emerged, it wasn't a weapon she held. It was her badge and identification. She held them out calmly, her expression resolute, her authority unmistakable. I was on my way to headquarters for a meeting with the commissioner when you decided to pull me over, she said, her voice filled with quiet disappointment. Jenny's hands shook as she took the badge and ID, her eyes locking onto them as if trying to fully comprehend what they represented. She passed them to Tom, whose face had gone pale as the reality of his actions finally set in. His hands trembled, and his eyes widened with a mix of fear and regret. The weight of his mistake was crashing down on him. I didn't know, Tom stammered, his voice faltering as the full magnitude of his blunder struck him like a sledgehammer. Elaine's eyes, though steely with resolve, softened slightly, revealing a deep sense of betrayal. Would it have changed anything if you had known? She asked, her voice calm, but filled with sadness. Should it have? Every person, regardless of rank or skin color, deserves to be treated with respect and dignity. Her words hung in the air, a stark reminder of the principles that should have guided their actions from the beginning. Desperation crept into Tom's voice as he scrambled for a way out. Captain, please. I can explain. We've been getting reports of drug trafficking in this area. And Elaine cut him off sharply, her voice firm and final. Save your justifications. I saw you deliberately plant those drugs in my car, officer, Elaine said, her voice calm but laced with raw anger and disappointment. She glanced over at Jenny, her eyes filled with a mixture of hurt and expectation. And Officer Thompson here witnessed the whole thing, didn't she? Jenny's face reflected a complex mix of emotions, relief, determination, and a growing sense of resolve. Meeting Elaine's gaze, she nodded. Yes, Captain, I did, she said firmly, her voice steady despite the seriousness of the situation. Admitting the truth felt like a weight being lifted off her shoulders, but it also strengthened her commitment to stand on the side of justice. Tom's face twisted in fury as he turned his wrath on Jenny. His sense of betrayal was intense, and his voice was filled with venom. You little rat, he spat, his eyes blazing with anger. After everything I taught you, after all the years I spent mentoring you, you're going to side with her? Jenny didn't flinch. Her gaze remained locked on Tom, and her voice stayed calm and unwavering. I'm siding with the truth, she declared, standing firm in her moral stance. It wasn't just a response. It was a stand against the corruption she had witnessed. Elaine stepped between them, her calm but commanding presence acting as a shield against Tom's growing rage. That's enough, Officer Tom, Elaine said, her voice like steel cutting through the tension. Your actions today have not only violated department policy, but also broken the law. Effective immediately, you are suspended from duty. Hand over your badge and gun." The impact of Elaine's words hit Tom like a hammer. His face twisted with a primal mix of disbelief and anger, and his body trembled under the weight of his emotions. "You can't do this to me," he shouted, his voice cracking with desperation. "I've given 2 decades of my life to this force. I've sacrificed everything, and this is how you repay me." His plea was raw and anguished, a desperate attempt to hold on to what was slipping away. But Elaine's decision was final. Her voice was softer now, but the gravity of her words cut through the tension like a knife. "In those 20 years," she asked quietly, "how many innocent lives have you ruined? How many people have suffered because of your prejudice?" Each question hit Tom with the weight of his actions, slowly breaking through his defiant stance. His shoulders slumped, and the realization of his moral failures began to sink in. The damage he had caused, the lives he had upended, it all weighed heavily on him, leaving him exposed and broken. As Elaine turned to call for backup, a small crowd began to gather nearby. The atmosphere was electric, filled with the quiet buzz of onlookers, many of them recording the scene with their phones. The sight of a corrupt officer being exposed by the very person he had tried to frame was becoming an instant spectacle, one that would spread far beyond this moment. The significance of what was unfolding wasn't lost on anyone. The drama playing out before their eyes was set to ripple throughout the community and beyond. Jenny, still shaken from the whirlwind of events, turned to Elaine. Her voice was filled with regret. "Captain, I'm so sorry for not speaking up sooner," she said, her words tinged with self-reproach. Elaine's expression softened as she placed a reassuring hand on Jenny's shoulder. "You did the right thing when it mattered, Officer Thompson," she said, her voice warm with understanding. "That's what counts. Sometimes, all it takes is one moment of courage to make a real difference. You showed that courage when it was most needed." Her words were a comfort to Jenny, easing the guilt she had carried, and an affirmation of the integrity that had ultimately won out in the end. As they stood together, waiting for backup to arrive, both women knew that this moment marked the beginning of something much bigger. What had started as a routine traffic stop had now become a pivotal turning point, one that would challenge not only their precinct, but the entire community as it rippled outward, a testament to the power of standing up for what is right. Beyond the immediate confrontation, the unmasking of Captain Davis had sparked a chain reaction that was destined to bring about a much-needed reckoning. This moment would force their department, and even the entire city, to face and address the deep-rooted issues of racism and corruption that had long simmered beneath the surface. The sound of approaching sirens grew louder, the wail of the emergency vehicles echoing through the streets, signaling the arrival of reinforcements. But for Jenny and Elaine, this was no longer about just a single traffic stop gone wrong. It had now become a critical flashpoint for the community's long-simmering frustrations and grievances. This moment was poised to become a defining event, one that would serve as a powerful catalyst for change, reshaping the relationship between the police and the people they were sworn to protect. As the sirens drew closer, the weight of the situation became even more evident. The eyes of the city were on them, and the larger world was on the verge of paying attention. The stakes had never been higher. This wasn't just a confrontation. It was a pivotal moment that would demand accountability, provoke the necessary changes, and, hopefully, pave the way for a more just and equitable future. In the face of this monumental challenge, Jenny and Elaine stood united. Their resolve was strengthened by the knowledge that their actions in this crucial moment could have lasting, far-reaching consequences. The decision to stand up for what was right, to confront the corruption head-on, would send ripples throughout their community. What an intense and eye-opening journey we've witnessed today. From a routine traffic stop to a dramatic confrontation, this story has shown us the profound impact of standing up for justice and the courage it takes to challenge wrongdoing. We've seen how a single act of integrity can ignite change and hold those in power accountable. Now, we want to hear from you. What have you learned from this story? How will you apply these lessons in your own life? Share your thoughts and insights in the comments below. Your perspective might inspire others to take action as well. If you like this video, please leave your comment below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more stories like this.